Hello and welcome to another episode of the M365 FM podcast. Today we're diving into one of the most exciting shifts happening in software development, the evolution of agentic coding and how natural language is becoming the purest form of low-code development. Joining me today is Nick Dolman and an independent Power Platform specialist, trainer, coach, Microsoft MVP, and Microsoft certificated trainer. From 2000 to 2003, Nick worked at Microsoft as a senior content developer, focusing on Power Pages, Power Automate, and Power Platform skill content. He also is a co-host of the Boost podcast, a content creator, and outside of tech, an international competitive powerlift representing Team Canada. Yeah, Nick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Marco.
I hope I have never forgot.
Oh, it's a lot, yeah. It looks impressive on a bio, but yeah, I do those things, so yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Powerlifting.
Well, we could talk about we could we could talk about powerlifting the whole session if we're not careful about it, but yeah, it's to me, it's at the end of the day, it's a hobby sport. It's something I took up, oh, probably about, I think 13 or 14 years ago, just getting out of shape, but like, okay, I wanna go to the gym. Met with a personal trainer, hated running. If I tell people, "If you see me running, then you better start running too, because something's gone horribly wrong." I much prefer doing, like, weightlifting, free weights, that kinda thing. Got into powerlifting competitions, and yeah, in a couple weeks, I'll be competing at the World Bench Press Championship. I look at the stats, I won't win, but I'll definitely compete and have a lot of fun. To me, powerlifting is my mental therapy. It's my going to the gym. It gets me away off the keyboard, away from a screen, and kind of gets resets my mind. There's an expression I hear: exhaust the body, calm the mind, and that's for me is what powerlifting is all about.
And how did powerlifting bring you to Power Platform?
Well, I was doing Power Platform long before that. If anything, Power Platform brought me to powerlifting. Been working with tech. Oh man, like I got my first computer when I was like, I think I was like 15 or 16 years old. I got Commodore 64. Started programming in BASIC. I started doing a little bit of assembler and machine language. Went to school for electronics engineering in computer systems. So did a lot of, at that time, C++, assembler as well, working on different microprocessors. Really got more into software, and then eventually that kind of led me to something called Microsoft Dynamics CRM, which of course is the great grandfather to Dataverse and Power Apps. Started building building applications on top of Microsoft CRM. We used to call those XRM, meaning anything relationship management. And of course, that evolved into what we know as Power Apps today and Dataverse and all that. So, along the way, working in IT, as I'm sure a lot of people understand, it can be a bit of a stressful job, a bit of a lonely job, a lot of pressure. If the client systems are down, they're freaking out. They're calling you at all hours to get things up and running. So I found that very stressful. So for me, getting back in physical shape and getting into powerlifting was a way to escape some of that for at least part of the day. So I think the Power Platform brought me to powerlifting, not the other way around.
Okay. I think it's the yeah, it could be something with the name, but okay. Yeah, you also worked at Microsoft, and now you're um um yeah freelancer or
Freelancer. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I was, I mean, I worked for some, it's interesting in terms of my career. I worked for other Microsoft partners. I went off on my own as an independent contractor, freelancer. I grew a company. We had employees, we had an office, we had the whole bit. I learned very quickly that at my heart, I'm a technician. I like to always say fingers on keyboard, even though I'm using my microphone more and more these days, but just more that hands-on building things. So running a company really didn't line well with me. It really stressed me out, like dealing with HR issues and payroll and the bank and the taxes. And Of course, multiple, doing multiple project management. It was like, no, I really want to do the hands-on stuff. So ended up taking the company. We kind of got absorbed by a larger firm. I did a few years at that, went back on my own, and then got contacted by some folks I knew at Microsoft saying, "Hey, we think, based on because at that time I was an MVP, I was writing blogs, doing presentations. They said there's an interesting position at Microsoft working on the documentation for at that time it was called Power Apps Portals. And again, no, I don't wanna throw anybody under the bus, but the Power Apps Portals documentation wasn't necessarily the best. So in a way, it was good for me to become an MVP because I could write a lot of blogs on how to do things, and set things up. So it was a great opportunity for me to kinda get involved in that, and so I joined Microsoft. I thought, "Oh, this is gonna be an interesting career move." At that point, I wasn't sure I wanted to work for a big company, but uh, it was actually during the pandemic, so I really wasn't doing a lot of the traveling and community stuff anyway. So joined Microsoft. As I like to tell people, it was good to see how the sausage was made. Um, so working at Microsoft was good. If I got at that point, they were transitioning. They were basically creating what was going to be a new product, Power Pages, which was, of course, just transitioning Power Apps portals and do a bit of a rebrand. But of course, they added a bunch more tools to make it a standalone product. So I worked with that, reworking all the documentation, of course, writing new documentation for the new features. It was a lot of fun, but then over the course of the years, I found like I'm a builder at heart. I want to be building these things. It's great to kind of explain the process of how things are done. It was great to work with the team. So after 2 years, I decided to go back out being a freelancer. I wasn't laid off like a lot of people at Microsoft had been. It was my decision to go. It was interesting because they were doing layoffs, and I kind of like, oh, can we volunteer for this? And at that time, that was not an option. So, but it was good. I made a lot of great friends there. I wouldn't be adverse to going back to Microsoft for the right job. I'm just not sure the right job exists for me there. Um, but it was really good. So it was a good span of time. Met a lot of great people. Got to see how products were put together, how the marketing worked. Of course, I was it was in meetings with marketing people, and oh, we're going to rename it, and I'm going, do you guys not realize the stress and the anxiety and the confusion that happens every time you rename something? And they were like, "Oh, no, no, it'll be fine." And sure enough, months later, it wasn't. There was confusion and whatever else. But this is Microsoft, they like to
Yeah.
keep things interesting.
Well,
So anyways, it was good. And then yeah, went out back on my own freelancing again. Now it's been a couple years and I absolutely love it.
yeah, I think it's like running joke. The rename is of in Microsoft. It is yeah. Uh, that's yeah. I think in Azure, and I have seen these lists with all the services, and it's 2,100 services, and how often they change the name. It's like something. Yeah, I don't know. And there are services I never heard before, like satellite service and so on, and they rename it. I think, oh yeah, okay, but yeah, this is marketing or something. I don't know. But what excites you most today compared to Power Platform, I say 5 years ago?
Oh, I mean, Marco, it's radically changed. It's interesting. I would say if you talked to me even a year ago or 2 years ago, the make.powerapps.com would be the main tool that I would be living in, of course, creating tables, working on apps, um, building things out that way in Power Automate Designer, those types of things. I would say today I'm kind of, and then of course with Power Pages into the design studio, and then of course for the Power Pages folks, people, everybody knows about the Power Pages management app or the Portals management app, which was a model driven app where we did a lot of configuration. Those were the tools that I lived in. These days, I would say if you look at the last 3 to 6 months, I am living in Visual Studio Code probably at least 75% or 80% of the time. And I'm seeing that every day become more and more because there's more and more things we can do to build on top of the Power Platform. And that not only Power Pages, but even building Power Apps. And even if you're building traditional Power Apps and model-driven apps, I had to create an app with a whole bunch of tables. I didn't go into the Maker portal and start creating these tables. I went into Visual Studio Code. They have, of course, the Dataverse MCP server. They have Dataverse skills. I'm basically using natural language. I'm saying, hey, design me a data model that, fits this. And then let it iterate. We go through, like I say, me and the agent, we go through, we take a look at that data model. We might make a few adjustments. And then it's like, okay, go build it. And it will go and create all those tables and those fields and wire it up. Does it do it perfectly all the time? No, not necessarily, but it's saving me going through the maker portal and clicking and back and forth and everything like that. So, and these tools, like some of these tools are only a couple weeks old, they're constantly being updated. It's radically changing how we build things. And then even as doing development and code, working in Power Pages, even working what we say traditional Power Pages sites with like web templates and things like that. I'm working with these coding agents, whether it's GitHub Copilot or Claude Code, and we're building Liquid, we're building HTML, I'm actually getting a handle on CSS, those types of things, and it's not like I'm just telling it to go and do something. I'm working with it, going, okay, we need to work on this web template today. I need it to do these features. Okay, well, here's some code. And I take a look at it again, making sure it's like supervising, making sure it's lined up. But usually it's pretty good. Sometimes there's a bit of iteration going, no, I think you need to do this, or no, this liquid tag, we need to do this. But overall, my productivity has just gone through the roof in terms of what I can create and what I can modify. And that's the exciting part. And now I come from a development background, but I also think from a maker perspective, I think if you're a traditional Power Apps maker, or if you're doing Power Automate or Copilot Studio, you definitely need to load Visual Studio Code on your computer. And yes, it is a bit technical, but get your head wrapped around it. It's getting easier, but begin to use some of these agents because I think it's going to make a lot of your chores a lot easier. So you can focus more, focus your brain power more on the creative design stuff. So I'm just it's kind of blowing me away, but it's changing. And this is just the regular stuff. We haven't even touched on the new stuff like code apps and single page applications and how that's going to radically change how the Power Platform evolves. And of course, the question keeps popping up. It's okay, does this mean do we still need the Power Platform? Can't we just use some of these other tools, whether, GitHub Copilot or Claude or even Replit or Lovable and, just talk to the machine and build these apps? What do we need the Power Platform for? Well, I mean, what the Power Platform is giving us is, the Dataverse as that data layer, that data structure. At the end of the day, you still need a place to store your information. And then the governance and security, like could you vibe code all that? You could, but do you really trust it? Are you going to get all the nooks and crannies?
Yeah.
This is where Power Platform has all this stuff built in. They have the governance. They're getting more and more the monitoring, the metrics and all that kind of stuff. Things that whether you're a pro coder, a maker, a vibe coder, things you don't need to worry about. So it's great we can build the apps. It's great we have a platform where we can host it, let our users access it. So that's how I see things changing in the Power Platform.
Okay, awesome. And we have this wonderful title, The Evolution of Agentic AI Coding. And we have all I say, buzzwords. We heard low code, no code, vibe coding, Copilot Studio, AI Foundry, and all yeah, this buzzwords. What does agentic coding means to you?
It's yeah, an evolving term because we've heard vibe coding, we've heard vibe engineering. So to me, what agentic coding is as before as a developer, if I was going to write some code even a year ago or 2 years ago, there's a a blank screen in Visual Studio Code or in Visual Studio or whatever editor you're using. Now it's to me, agentic coding is we start out with that blank screen, but we now have that side panel or we have the terminal open to a Claude code or a GitHub Copilot, and then we are again, I've always, whether you're a maker or developer, I always say you should start with a plan. And this is where I will generally start with other tools. Claude Cowork is my kind of place where I'm living these days in terms of that of the front end design it. So, of course, collecting all those customer requirements, their diagrams, meeting transcripts. We do Teams meetings to record all that. You put that in a place, whether it's a Claude Cowork project, whether it's in a Microsoft 365 Cowork project or a notebook. And then you begin your agentic process where you're beginning to work with an agent and say, okay, here's all the information. Here is our goal. We need to design a system that does this. Help me design the data model. Help me put together a product requirements document um, that kind of makes sense of what we're going to build. And then once we have that product requirements document, whether we call it a vision document or a spec or whatever you want to call it, something that we could even share with our customers to say, okay, here's what we described. Here's what we're going to build. Does this make sense? Absolutely or not, or we could again iterate on that either with the agent or with the customer. So that to me is sort of the first step in the agentic development process is getting that spec or that, thing right. And then finally, once we're happy with it, then we can tell our AI tool of choice to say, okay, build me a prompt that I'm going
Mm.
to feed into the tool of choice, whether it's Plan Designer, whether it's an agentic code or Claude code or whatever, or even if you're not in the Microsoft space, a Lovable or a Replit, telling our agent, build me a prompt that I'm going to feed into a code generation tool, or give me a series of prompts breaking down things like the data model, the UI, the agents it's going to create. And then we can feed that into our, we have Visual Studio Code open. We feed that into our Claude code, or, we have it already thing wired up to our Dataverse, whatever. And then we can actually begin to work with it. To me, this is agentic development. It's not necessarily vibe coding, just go build me this and trusting the agent knows what it's doing. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. It doesn't always know. To me, agentic is now I'm more of it's like pair programming. I'm getting a developer, I'm working with a developer, they're building it out. I'm using my experience and knowledge, taking a look at the code that's generated, taking a look at the process it's generating, kind of testing along the way. Now, some of you might say, well, that's kind of inefficient. Like, what's the point? You're still in front of the computer. But that whole process goes from 10 hours to 1 hour because you can begin to build things very quickly. You'll generate that code very quickly. You can test it. You can even get, other agents to test it along with you using things like Playwright. And that to me is an agentic developer these days is more, in a sense, more of a supervisor
But
than an actual coder. But we're still, we still need to have that technical knowledge. We still need to know how the pieces work. So yeah, I mean, I'd put it in an analogy. The AI could be building things like the wheelbarrow, like in terms of you're building a wheelbarrow, the AI is still building your wheels, your handles, your bucket. You still need to tell the AI how to put these pieces together, understand how these pieces are being put together to get the end result that your customer wants. So to me, it's a very exciting time to be very creative for me being very creative. I'm not worried about AI taking my job. AI is helping me with my job more than anything. And it's allowing me to be a lot more creative and then also addressing things that I might have forgotten. I was working on some code the other day and again, talking with Claude, okay, I need it to do this. It goes through, okay, we're going to do this. And then it even came back and said, oh, by the way, don't you think we should also update this other piece? Because there's this other panel where customers are going to be looking at like, yeah, for sure, we should update that too. And it's kind of amazing to kind of work with these tools. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of terminology being kicked around, and I think everybody might have their own definition. But to me, this is what agentic development's all about.
mm, awesome. Can we say, are we moving from writing code to describing intent to orchestrating yeah,
Well,
intelligent system?
yeah, I think if we think about it, that's always been the goal, right? Because let's go back like before my time when they developed these, what computers were first built in the 40s and 50s, they were all switches and transistors and things like that. And then they got to punch cards and everything like that. But it's even those early languages like COBOL, and those types of things. It was still a matter of trying to take let's say English words or regular words that would translate into computer code. So even look at like BASIC or C, like we're still using actual words like let X equal 10, or, go to line whatever, or loop through for each iteration. So we're still using language words to describe things to the computer, but it's getting more and more natural language now. So we're keep
Yo,
evolving. So at the end of the day, the goal's always been the same. Just the language is getting much more aligned to how we talk. So before, if I was going to do a loop, I would say for X equals 10, loop through. But now I can say, hey, AI, we need to loop through this, or even not even that. I need to display a table on the screen, and it already knows to loop through the data, and it writes the code for that. So it's interesting in a sense of, yeah, we are, you know, it's always been language, but it's getting more and more to the natural language. What's also cool about it too is, and this is where the other thing we're transitioning. If I was to write code even a few years ago, I'd be typing the language, right? I'd be on my keyboard typing the code, and of course, I would sort of know, but we got into things like IntelliSense, and then more and more with the GitHub Copilot, it starts to kind of predict that code, what's being written. I'm actually more and more using my microphone now. I'm using an add-in called Whisper Flow, but of course there's other tools out there. And I press two keys on my keyboard, and I will talk to the computer, and I would say, okay, I now want to create a web template that reads from this Dataverse table and blah blah blah. And I that's how I'm interacting. So I'm even saving time in terms of keying in stuff. So we're getting into all of that, almost that Star Trek mode where we're going, "Hey, computer, I need this to happen." But even if you look at Star Trek, there were still people on the bridge. There were still people talking to the computer. So if that's our future, I think we're okay.
yeah, uh, I'm, I found this speaking with AI. I'm not sort of big fan of it, but what I love is making diagrams and graphics and upload this and say, hey, make me this. I find this. I love this well, so I can. I think when I speak, I forgot something, and though I have all the processes I have thinking hours and then do, I think that is also what actually I see it. What not going is to think about systems and the system thinking, and I think also we have, especially when we look at Microsoft, it's an enterprise software what they build, and this is a so big ecosystem. So I think, yeah, that's really really interesting. But when we look a little bit more to the Power Platform, what or how the evolution actually there with agentic coding?
Yeah, it's an interesting time because, everybody's talking about like code apps or generative pages or single page applications. And this is where we're no longer using the front end, the Power Apps infrastructure. So you look at something like Canvas apps. Well, it's like, oh, we can now create a code app. And this is using frameworks like React and Vite or Angular or some of these other things, and building traditional way. So in a way, it feels like, I don't want to say it's a step back, but it's a sort of a step kind of into the mainstream. Yet at the end of the day, we're still talking to Dataverse and still, using that governance. So it's interesting, but it's also what I think, what's sort of missing at this point is the layering of things. So right now, if I build a model driven app or build some Canvas apps or whatever else, I deliver that to my customer. Or if, let's say, I even build a product, we deliver that to our customer. The Power Platform allows users to extend that. Oh, that's great. You built this, event management model driven app, but we want to add our own fields, or we want to add our own flavor. The layering can do all that. This is something, in something like code apps is not quite there yet. or I'm not sure how it will be kind of thing. So I think there's still definitely a place for model driven apps in the future, power apps. And interesting, if you had asked me even a few months ago, I would have said, yeah, Canvas apps are done. They're dead. And I even probably said that publicly. But looking now, we actually have Canvas, a Power Apps MCP server, the Canvas Apps MCP server, where you can use, say, agentic methods like I described, but you're not actually writing React code. It's creating Canvas apps kind of with the same method. So I still think there's definitely, and of course, that way a maker can still go in and make those kind of fine tuning adjustments where in an agentic coding place, in a code apps place, you're talking to your agent and they have to make those adjustments for you. So there's still a bit, yeah, you can still go into if you want to make adjustments manually to a code app, you need to know React or TypeScript or some of these things, where at least if you're, creating a Canvas apps or a model driven app, yes, the agent can do all this stuff for you, but it's much more approachable for you to, as a maker, to go in and make these adjustments. So it is, it's going to be an interesting year how this all evolves. To be honest, in terms of I've been definitely making my own code apps. I've been building single page applications. Um, in terms of customer projects, yes, a few generative pages. Definitely using the agents to build traditional code. I've not deployed an actual code app into a production system yet, or a single page application into a pure production system. I definitely will probably in the next few months. So I think a lot of people are sort of in the same boat. So I think that's where we're going to see a few of these things kind of pop up along the way going, oh, okay, we created, this partner created this code app. We need it adjusted, but the partner has gone away or whatever else. But where's the original source code? It's uploaded as a solution. Where are the original prompts for this? No one has those anymore. To me, I think, if I was a customer and I'm getting a partner writing, a power app for me or creating a code app, of course, we always talked about, someone, you should actually maintain control of your own source code or your own unmanaged solutions. If I was a customer, I'd be asking for the original prompts as well. Or as I do in my own, we didn't really talk about this in my agentic coding process. Usually after I create something, what I have been doing is getting the agent to document it, to actually write all the parameters, the variables, and all this, put that in the wiki. But I'm also saying it now, write me the prompt that can regenerate this. Because of course you go through all that iteration by having that prompt that gives you a starting point that if you need to rewrite it or refactor it. So I think these are the types of assets customers should be maintaining control of. It should be in their GitHub repositories or their ADO repositories as just a part of regular source code. So in our source code, we've always had code where we've had our solutions or our unmanaged solutions. We should also have the documentation that the agents are creating, test cases, and as well a document that probably says, or even the skills that were used, but also a document that says, here is the prompt to recreate this. Because to go back on that later could be pretty tricky. And I think these are the things people are going to be facing in the next year.
Mm. And uh, I think a little bit about the Power Platform, and we have so many tools in it, like Power Apps, Power Pages, Power Automates, Dataverse, and yeah, Power BI, and so on. But
Yep.
um, what did you think get they stronger through AI, and will it makes more sense to separate these products or see it as one product?
That's it. I think we might see more of a consolidation. Of course, there's also about 50 different Dynamics 365 modules and projects that are built on top of this. I see in terms of the user interface experiences, everything coming more and more together. I think you see where Microsoft is going or where they started to go down the road with Teams, but also now with M365 Copilot. I see that sort of being the surface of how we're going to interact with our business systems. So we're going to come to a place, I think, probably not that far down the road where we're not going to open up our sales or Dynamics 365 sales or our Power App that we created for event management. Um, I think what's going to happen is we're going to open up Microsoft 365 Copilot, and that's how we're going to interact. And the agent, we're going to say, here, I'm going to open up my sales agent, or I'm even just going to chat, and it's going to know to interact with my sales agent. What are my opportunities? And the chat will tell me, or it's going to have the backend processes updating these things. From our customers' perspective, I think Power Pages has a good future because that could be the surface for our customers to interact with our agents. But Power Pages is going to be less about clicking buttons. It's going to be more of interacting with an agent or even providing an agent to our customers M365. Hey, I need to log a support ticket with ABC company. Microsoft 365 Copilot is going to have, it's going to know my account to log into their portal or interact with their agent to be able to, you know, interact that way. So it's going to be like, hey, I need to open a ticket because, there's an issue with my phone or something. And then it's going to be, yes, your agent is going to say, yes, I talked to their agent and they're suggesting that you do this, do, or I took a look at your backend config. And it's just, it's gonna be very our way of interacting with computers is gonna radically change, and that the Power Platform, I think, is in a good place, but I don't see us working with multiple Canvas apps, model-driven apps, down the road. I think we're gonna be interacting more, I think, either through Microsoft 365 Copilot or Teams, or even for that matter, something like a WhatsApp or Telegram. My WhatsApp, I'm gonna send a WhatsApp to my sales system and get all my details, and it's gonna send me a text back with all the everything I'm looking for. Um, it's it kind of it's hard to get your mind wrapped around it, but that's how I sort of that's my vision, how I see things going. And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I have no idea. I guess we'll see. We should maybe schedule a follow-up in about a year's time, see if my predictions are right.
When we think, I say not developers, I say Power Platform makers. So they spend they spend less time in pure coding development and so on. But have they now spent more time in validating business intent?
I think well, this is the problem, right? We always should have been spending a lot of time with the business intent, right? And sometimes it gets cut a little bit short because of course we have our ideas. I've always like it's funny because you open up the maker portal and then you have this blank canvas or you start building a model driven app. And I'm always telling people when I'm doing training, don't start here. Like start with a plan. Like, if it's on paper or do diagrams, at least have an idea of what you're doing to build out your app. Where um, I think now it's like if we want to make sure that our agent is going to work well with us, you're right. I think it maybe is giving us a little bit more focus on getting those front end requirements a little bit more clarified. The cool thing though is we have an agent to help us go through all of those team meetings, those documents. So we might not necessarily be spending more time, but we're spending more quality time to give us the results we want. And then the cool thing is, it's not like we're getting any kind of free time back because I think no matter it's a fishbowl effect, no matter what free time you have, it gets filled with other things. I'm probably taking on probably a little bit more project work than I probably should do, but it's becoming easier to manage because I can get more efficient. But then the other thing, with kind of the nice benefit is customers always have a big long to-do list. Like here are the 10 things we want. And then a lot of times you can only really focus on the top three. Well, because you're able to accomplish those top three, then you can move on to the list of the other things with some of these tools. And I'm beginning to see a little bit of that too. It's like, oh, well, we wanted to do this. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty easy to incorporate that into it now because it's not a lot of extra work. Um, I've always said too, a good CRM project never ends because a business is constantly evolving. Their business systems need updates and needs to evolve with the business. So if you do a good job getting the initial requirements right, then it kind of keeps coming back with all the new things or the adjustments that business make. Cool thing with the AI tools, they're much easier to get some of these things accomplished.
I think back for 3 years, I think the prompt engineering was, I don't know, the hypest job in the world. I think it was 360,000 euro dollars. Companies paid for this. And now, can we say it's? I will not say it's over, but it's becoming a core skill for every developer or every app maker.
Absolutely. I think, definitely you have to have your prompting right, but I think a lot of that prompting is also evolving into using those prompts to build reusable skills. So, when I say reusable skills, I'm not talking about the skills that we have as developers, but the skills that we give to our agents. So right now, if you open up my Claude or into my Visual Studio Code, every project, there's a skills file, or there's instructions, or there's plugins or other little agents. Building these things and understanding what fits best and trying to make that repeatable. I think a requirement, that or I'd say makers, low-code developers, or all developers need to get better at. Something that I'm trying to get better at as well. If I look at some of the skills files I made like a month ago, I kind of cringe because I can do them better now. But that's just sort of, you're right. Prompt engineering is, you definitely need to know how to talk to the AI. And I think everybody's gotten better at that. And there's a lot of good information out there, but it's also now is putting together those reusable skills files and those skills um, to make this stuff your own and to be able to utilize skills that other people have made. And Microsoft has released some plugins with multiple skills files. Like, there's the Power Pages generator that you can put in Claude or GitHub Copilot, the Dataverse skills. There's a solution architect skills that I played with. And talk about diagrams. It was able to build a mermaid format diagram, ERD diagram the other day. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. This would have taken me a long time to use Visio like a year or two ago, and it just sort of did it. So yeah, yeah, I don't know where I was going with all of this, but yeah, it's these tools are amazing.
Yeah. Um, when we look, yeah, well, I would, I think a little bit. Can enterprise trust autonomous systems yet? And what's happened to GRC governance, risk and compliance in an agentic world?
I think I think a lot of organizations I dealt with are so not ready for that yet. Not ready mentally that you're going to trust agents to do certain things. But I think what that does is open up a huge opportunity for anybody to be a governance consultant or go in and to make sure to put in the tools and the guardrails and the monitoring so that these enterprise can get that trust level in. I know Chris Huntingford does a lot of sessions and presentations on this kind of stuff, and I see that being, you talk about AI is not going to take your job. AI just created a whole new industry about governance and guardrails and everything. So you think about like, but also Mirko, it's like about the transition to the cloud. If you remember 10 years ago, I had customers that were, "Oh, no, we don't wanna move our servers in the cloud. We don't trust it. We don't see where our servers are. We don't know who's looking at it, what access they have, what bits are flying over the internet." And but I mean, that evolved too. Like now, I mean, you like, you don't even customers don't even buy servers anymore. I'm trying to remember the last customer I knew that actually bought a server. It's just become part of, "Oh, we need this service. Well, we just sign up for it on the internet, and it's just there for us." And they now have that trust that the security is there and everything. Of course, we do still hear incidents where, yeah, there are data leaks and whatever else. But the thing is, even with that, there are people that I know that are strictly, their careers are on cybersecurity and governance and that kind of thing. So I definitely see about an AI security engineer being probably that's your next $500,000 or 5,000 euro a year job, AI security engineer. Um, and I think eventually companies will get there. And the reason why is because all their competitors are going to do it. Um, so if you're a company and you don't want to use AI because you don't trust it or you don't know it, well, your competitor is going to, and then they're going to become more efficient. The same thing if you're a customer, you have a server. Well, your competitors went to the cloud, so they're not spending time on servers or maintenance or replacing servers. So they're becoming more competitive. So they'll get there. I think they're a little bit behind of where Microsoft probably wants to see folks, but they'll get there eventually.
Mm, Um, there's, I think, uh, yeah, relative new product, the Dataverse, and I think a little bit, uh, why we need Dataverse to a traditional or a graph database I can take from Azure. What's your opinion about Dataverse? I'm a little bit critical.
So we talked about Microsoft renaming earlier. Dataverse is not a new product.
Okay.
Dataverse can go I would say, and I know there's a few folks that sort of may not completely agree with me, but to me, Dataverse version 1 was released in 2003. And that is 23 years ago. So, is it the exact same as it was then? Absolutely not. It was basically a business layer sitting on, or a business application layer sitting on top of SQL Server. Of course, if you peel back the layers of Dataverse, there's still Azure SQL behind the scenes. So you still have that robust data. But what Dataverse gives you is a security layer. There's automation built in there. There's the ability for whether it's originally a maker to build their own data models very easily. Now it's, of course, you can get agents to build those data models very easily. They have the performance in there. They have, a lot of those integrations to other systems. So there's a reporting, there's the ability to store information efficiently, to be able to retrieve it efficiently. Is it perfect? Definitely not. Is there some old code in there? Absolutely. That probably could be refactored. But overall, Dataverse, in a sense, to me, is really the core of the business system because at the end of the day, you still need to store your information somewhere. Yes, you could do it in an Azure SQL database, or any other databases that are out there, like even non-Microsoft. But Dataverse sort of gives you a lot of that extra stuff, has that governance built in, has that security level built in, has that monitoring built in, things that you don't need to worry about when you're building applications. It's just sort of all baked in. You hire somebody in your company that knows Dataverse, regardless, you can be a completely different industry. But if they know Dataverse, those skills are transferable, and there's a lot of deep knowledge on that, and a lot of enhancements. So to me, it's like this is sort of the key thing with Power Platform. Um, you have that sort of core engine that's been running enterprises for years, despite the fact Microsoft renamed it, or it originally didn't even have a name. It was just sort of all the back end of CRM, and then of course they came out with they called it CDS, the Common Data Service. They started building that and they realized everything they wanted to build already existed in CRM, became Common Data Service. They called it, I think, for about 20 hours, it was called Dataflex, and then that became Dataverse. Uh, you talk about renaming snafus, but overall, I still, and then looking forward, where we're going with the agentic stuff, or even having Microsoft 365 Copilot interact with your business systems behind the layers, whether it's building something in Copilot Studio or Foundry. And if you're building with those business systems, you're still talking to Dataverse. It's sort of the place where data lives.
So can we say Dataverse will become the brain for business applications?
I think so, at least the memory of sorts. Yeah.
Okay. Um, when we think a little bit, or yeah, what tip can you give companies to prepare for this future Power Platform AI, agentic coding stuff? How can they prepare for this?
I think you can't just it's not like you're gonna walk in one day and shut off all your old systems and turn on a new one. This is a new way of working. Okay. I think what we're going to have to see is a transition from where people are doing and start introducing new tools. So, for example, um, You look at a traditional model driven app, forms, lists, that kind of thing. People have been using it for years. They're used to it. Now we can add, I don't know if you've seen some of this stuff like the agent feed into this, a little Copilot sidecar. Even filling in the forms, a model driven app now has that new thing where you can begin to paste the smart paste or whatever they call it. This is sort of how companies are going to evolve. They're going to start getting these tools into their day to day. They're going to start saving time. And then eventually some of the existing tools will begin to drop off as we use new ones. I think we saw the same thing with the cloud. A lot of customers didn't necessarily jump completely in the cloud 100%. They started getting some cloud services. Maybe they do a jump or like move their exchange server from, an on-premise into the cloud. And then they realize, okay, this works so much better. And then to the point where you don't even all of a sudden one day you realize, okay, we're now fully, in the cloud. I think for AI and agentic, it's like, okay, we're now more and more we're using agentic systems. For instance, now it's going to be a case of, hey, I'm no longer loading up my app anymore because I can do everything in Microsoft 365 Copilot. It's all sort of there on that surface. Or I'm going to start, WhatsApping my app directly. And then it's just going to be those little things, and eventually it's going to transition out. So that's sort of, I know it's hard to kind of describe that in a roadmap if you're kind of presenting that to a customer, but I think that's how things are going to evolve. It's going to be a gradual to a point where in a few years you're going to be like everything the software we interact with is going to be much agentic, whether we're chatting with it or whether it's just happening, whether it's automatic. And it's, and even how, whether we're like to me, I've been talking more and more to my computer, like less and less I'm going to the keyboard to type things. I've been finding the last month or two, I'm just automatically got to that mental state where I'm immediately talking to it to write an email or do that kind of thing. And I think overall that's sort of how things are going to transition as well.
Okay. Yeah. Now we come to one of my favorite parts in interviews. I have looked for some quotes in the internet, and you can say what comes in your mind when you hear this. Um, Agentic AI now popping up everywhere, and Power Pages is no exception.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I built a fun site yesterday that I might blog about in a few weeks. But again, completely AI agentic created. It was me. I had it actually running on my other laptop, chatting with it. So yeah, Power Pages is definitely evolving, and even in traditional building web templates and things, I'm talking to with an AI as we're building it.
Power Pages is evolving into a robust, secure platform for AI enablement agents.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the security. So interesting. We talk about security in Power Pages. There's been a couple news articles over the years of data leaks involving Power Pages, and in both instances, it was not a fault of Power Pages. It was actually a fault of how it was configured. But because of those things, there are features that are now turned on by default, where they weren't. It was something you had to turn on before. So I'll talk about specifically something called table permissions. Originally, you could build a site and this table permissions existed, but you would have to physically turn them on to lock down your site. Of course, what happened was people built a site, they didn't bother, they didn't spend the time, and then of course someone was able to go in and leak a bunch of data. So that was a fault of really of the developers that put that together. But because of that, Microsoft flipped and say, okay, by default, table permissions are now turned on automatically. In order for you to see data, you're forced to go into the configuration. There's something else too. Like now, when you spin up a brand new Power Pages site, you physically have to make it is private facing first. You have to click a switch to make it public facing. And even then, your administrators can set up guardrails around that. That not everybody can make public sites. An administrator might need to give approvals for that. So, in terms of a secure platform, definitely. There still is a white paper that's a couple years old, but still really good. That's published on Microsoft's site about security within Power Pages. It was written by one of their engineers, Dipti, who uh, one of the smartest people I know, wrote a very good white paper article on the security of Power Pages, and best practices there. Plus, a lot of the features they got built in, like web application firewalls and content delivery networks, and again to make it run efficiently. But in terms of security, definitely it is something that I think is a huge feature of Power Pages over some of the competitive products.
Okay. Then the next one is the ultimate form of low code is natural language.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we've talked about that already a little bit about how, we're already talking like, programming in basic was, yeah, it was we're trying to get to speak as much regular language. I keep saying English, but I also realize that, there's other languages out there as well, but just trying to talk in the way, things that anybody. So I know a lot of people that are functional consultants and solution architects. They say they're not coders, they don't know how to write code, but they can look at code and read it. Um, these are the type of people that, again, if you can now take your logic and just talk to an agent and have it generate the code, um, it's definitely a game changing way of building software.
Yeah, thank you. This uh, was awesome. So I think I learned a lot, and it's really interesting. I think we had to do another edition sometime.
For sure. See, my predictions are right.
Um, yeah. So when you say or when you think what listeners should take from this episode, what's the one thing?
I would say if you're worried about AI taking your job, don't be. But I would also say in terms of the warning side, definitely try like get into learning these tools. Do get think with something that I've been doing is trying to everything that I do kind of ask the question, can AI do this? And guess what? The answer for a lot of these is no, it can't. You still need to go in and do something, or you still need to go click here and there. But there might be a few things that might surprise you that you can get AI to do. And a lot of the other things too is when if you tried to get AI to do something for you 6 months ago, try it again. You might be surprised. So, for example, I'm on as in the MVP program, we have these things called distribution lists. They're like an email list where people ask questions and the Microsoft product team. It's a good interaction. There can be 50 of these emails every day. Um, it takes forever to read through them. And I'm like, so about I'd say a year ago, I went to Microsoft Copilot and I said, summarize these emails and send me a digest once a day. Do you think Copilot? No, like it told me it did it and it failed miserably.
Yeah.
And I even poked a few people at Microsoft going, okay, here's what I'm trying to do. How do you get this to work? And they, oh, yeah, it should work, but no. So, and then, anyways, I ended up building a Power Automate. I used a custom prompt and it took me quite a while, but I got it working. Fair enough. It worked. I got a digest every day. And then of course with Power Automate, I changed my password, and then of course the email connections broke and a few other things. So I had to go in and fix it. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to ask Microsoft Cowork or 365 Copilot Cowork, which has just been released in the Frontier program. And I asked it again, "Hey, I want to do this summary of emails to the distribution list, blah, blah, blah." And remember, 6 months ago, it couldn't do it. Now it actually went through. And then it asked, oh, can I have permission to read your inbox? Yes. Okay, I'm going to do this. Do. And then boom, within probably about 20 minutes, I have now this repeatable process built in my cowork that does this every day. So I would think in terms of for anybody that's out there who has tried some of these tools last year or even a couple months ago, try it again. You might, like I said, you might be surprised. The other thing, if you're a Power Platform maker, if you're into the make.powerapps.com or whatever else, load Visual Studio Code. Don't be scared. Load it, try some of these agents out. There's a lot of good content out there. I've actually pitched a few sessions for some of the fall conferences about how to use Visual Studio Code for Power Apps makers. Hopefully, those sessions get selected. But I'll probably make a few videos and some content around that because I think that we're at a point where I think if you're comfortable if you're comfortable writing Power Effects code, go into Visual Studio Code, work with these agents, and it's just going to make your own productivity so much better. So I would say just have a curious mindset. Prepare to be disappointed because a few things just still don't work. but just be experimental and see what works, and you'll be surprised. I'm always like, what I love about this job was I'm learning new things every week, and and it sort of keeps me going.
Yeah, then, yeah, so thank you for your time. This was a
Yeah, no
really
problem.
great session. And yeah, I hope we see you in 6 months again, and then we talk what have changed.
Absolutely, sounds good.
Okay, then bye. Have a nice day.
Thanks. See you, Marco.